Nobody wanted to dance with the man in the wheelchair, but a poor woman approached and the ballroom shone with the golden lights of the crystal chandeliers, reflecting off the champagne glasses that circulated among the most important guests in New York City. Harrison Reed adjusted his glasses and watched the couples dancing to the orchestra's music, feeling the weight of the pitying looks that fell upon his wheelchair. At 28, he had learned to recognize that kind of expression, a mix of pity and discomfort that people tried to disguise with forced smiles. The annual charity gala was a yearly tradition of the New York elite, and Harrison knew his presence there did not go unnoticed. Since he had taken over as president of Reed Infrastructure after the accident that changed his life 2 years ago, every social event had become a minefield of awkwardness and delicate situations. He took a deep breath and decided to try once more. He approached a young executive who was talking near the dance floor, maneuvering his chair skillfully between the elegantly decorated tables. "Excuse me, would you like to dance?" he asked with a gentle smile, adjusting his dark blue tie that matched his impeccable suit perfectly. The woman looked down, clearly uncomfortable, and muttered an excuse about having hurt her ankle earlier. Harrison thanked her politely and moved away, feeling the familiar sting of rejection in his chest. It wasn't the first time that night, nor would it be the last. On the other side of the ballroom, Maya Collins balanced a tray of canapes while watching the scene with growing indignation. At 25, she had been working as a waitress at high-class events for 3 years, always maintaining the professional discretion the job required. But something about that situation deeply bothered her. She saw Harrison approach 2 more women, receiving evasive answers and uncomfortable looks. The romantic music kept playing, and couples spun elegantly across the floor, unaware of the silent drama unfolding nearby. Maya felt her heart tighten, seeing the look of disappointment Harrison tried to hide behind a diplomatic smile. "This isn't right," she murmured to herself, setting the tray down on a nearby table. She knew she could lose her job for abandoning her duties, but something stronger drove her forward. Maybe it was the memory of how many times she herself had felt invisible or rejected because of her humble origins. Maya smoothed her simple black dress, the most elegant one she owned, and walked determinedly to where Harrison was sitting, watching the dancers with poorly concealed melancholy. His brown hair was perfectly styled, and his gold-rimmed glasses reflected the ballroom lights. "Excuse me," she said, stopping beside the wheelchair. "Would you like to dance with me?" Harrison looked up, surprised. For a moment he seemed not to believe what he had heard. Maya kept her smile, reaching her hand out toward him. There was something genuine in her brown eyes that immediately put him at ease. "Are you sure?" he asked, still incredulous. "Absolutely," she replied, taking his hand gently. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out." Now, continuing. Harrison guided his wheelchair to a less crowded area of the dance floor, where other couples respectfully made room. Maya positioned herself beside him, allowing him to lead her in an adapted dance that surprised them both with how natural it felt. She placed one hand on his shoulder, while their free hands intertwined, moving in sync with the soft music. "I'm Harrison," he said, spinning his wheelchair gently as she followed along. "Maya," she replied, feeling a strange connection forming between them. "And you dance very well." "Thank you for coming over to me," he said sincerely. "It doesn't happen often." "Then people don't know what they're missing," she shot back, and there was something in the way she said it that made Harrison realize she truly believed what she was saying. They danced for 2 more songs, chatting about small talk and discovering little affinities. Harrison noticed how natural and uncomplicated Maya was, without a trace of the artificiality that characterized most people at events like that one. She, in turn, was impressed by his intelligence and sense of humor, as well as the respectful way he treated her. "Do you work here?" Harrison asked, observing Maya's simple dress in contrast to the luxurious outfits of the other guests. "Yes, I'm a waitress. Actually, I should be working right now," she admitted with a sheepish smile. "Then let's stop. I don't want you to get into trouble," he said. But Maya shook her head. "Don't worry. Some things are more important than work." It was at that moment that Harrison saw two familiar figures approaching the dance floor. His smile disappeared immediately, and Maya noticed the change in his expression. Vanessa Thorne, elegant in an emerald green dress, walked arm in arm with Bradley Shaw, who had been Harrison's best friend since childhood. The couple looked radiant, oblivious to the devastating impact their presence had on the young businessman. "Do you know those two?" Maya asked, following Harrison's gaze. "Unfortunately, yes," he murmured. "The woman is my ex-fiancée. The man was my best friend." Maya felt Harrison's body tense up, and instinctively she squeezed his hand more firmly. "Want to get out of here?" she offered. "No," he said, taking a deep breath. "I mean, if you don't mind staying a little longer. I don't want to give the impression that I'm running away." Vanessa and Bradley positioned themselves at the center of the floor, dancing with an intimacy that made it clear how long they had been together. Other guests watched them approvingly, some commenting on what a handsome couple they made. Harrison watched it all with an expression of contained pain that broke Maya's heart. "How long ago did you two end?" she asked softly. "Officially, 1.5 years. Unofficially." He paused. "I guess since the accident, 2 years ago." Maya didn't press for more details, but her mind began putting the pieces together. The accident that had put him in a wheelchair, the broken engagement, the betrayal of his best friend. It was a sequence of events that explained a great deal about the melancholy she perceived in Harrison. "You know what hurts the most," he continued, as if he needed to get it off his chest with someone. "It's that they've been together since before the accident. Bradley always liked Vanessa, and when I ended up like this, he saw an opportunity." "That's terrible," Maya said, genuinely outraged. "How can someone do that to a friend?" "Easily, apparently," Harrison replied bitterly. "Vanessa said she couldn't handle my new condition. Bradley offered her a shoulder to cry on and, well, the rest is history." Maya felt a growing anger toward those two people who had caused Harrison so much suffering. She could see that he was a good man, intelligent and attractive, who deserved far more than the betrayal and abandonment he had endured. "You want to know what I think?" she said, making Harrison look directly at her. "I think you got rid of two people who didn't deserve your loyalty, and one day they'll realize they made a huge mistake." Harrison smiled for the first time since he'd seen his ex-couple. "You have a very straightforward way of seeing things, don't you?" "I come from a simple family. We learn to call things by their name," Maya replied, "and we also learn to recognize good people when we meet them." The song came to an end, but neither of them made a move to step away. There was something special happening between them, a connection that transcended the circumstances of their meeting. "Maya, would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow?" Harrison asked, gathering his courage. She hesitated for a moment. She knew he was clearly from a very different social class than hers, and that could complicate things, but there was something in his sincerity that touched her deeply. "I'd love to," she finally answered. "But it has to be somewhere simple. I don't fit in fancy restaurants." "I know the perfect place," Harrison said, smiling. "A downtown pizzeria that makes the best margarita pizza in New York City. Nothing fancy, just good food and a relaxed atmosphere." They exchanged phone numbers, and Maya finally returned to work, feeling as if she were floating. Harrison stayed in the ballroom for a few more hours, but now with a completely different expression. For the first time in a long while, he felt hope. The next day, Maya woke up in the small apartment she shared with her mother, Mrs. Martha, 62 years old, in the Bronx. The two-room apartment was simple but clean, decorated with family photos and some items inherited from her grandmother. "You seem different today, sweetheart," Mrs. Martha commented, watching the special care Maya was taking in getting ready. "I met someone yesterday, Mum," Maya admitted, choosing among her few casual clothes. "Someone from work." "Not exactly," Maya replied, deciding not to go into details for now. "It's complicated." Mrs. Martha furrowed her brow, worried. She knew her daughter well enough to know when something important was happening. Maya had always been careful with relationships, especially after the traumatic divorce 2 years ago. "Just promise me you'll be careful," her mother said, touching her daughter's arm affectionately. "I always am," Maya assured her, kissing Mrs. Martha's forehead. Meanwhile, Harrison woke up in the Reed family penthouse in the Upper East Side. The 3,000-square-foot apartment was luxurious but cold, with expensive furniture that looked more like museum pieces than everyday items. He prepared breakfast in the modern kitchen, thinking about the conversation he would have to have with Maya sooner or later about his true identity. He hadn't lied about who he was. He simply hadn't mentioned that he was the heir to one of the largest construction companies in the country. Reed Infrastructure had projects spread all over Brazil, and Harrison had taken over as president at 26, right after the accident that changed everything in his life. The accident. He tried not to think too much about that terrible day, when a car crash on the West Side Highway resulted in permanent damage to his spinal cord. The doctors were blunt. He would never walk again. Vanessa tried to be understanding in the first few weeks, but it quickly became clear that she couldn't handle the new reality. Bradley, on the other hand, was always present, offering emotional support to both Harrison and Vanessa. What Harrison didn't know at the time was that Bradley was taking advantage of those intimate moments with his fiancée to win her over, using her emotional vulnerability after the accident. The discovery of the betrayal happened brutally. Harrison came home early one day and found them together. Not just physically together, but clearly involved for a long time. The intimate conversations, the plans for the future, the complicity, everything indicated that the relationship had begun well before Vanessa officially ended the engagement. Harrison shook his head, pushing away the painful memories. Today would be different. Today he would have a date with a woman who had offered to dance with him without knowing his story or his bank account. They met at the downtown pizzeria at 7 in the evening. Maya arrived wearing a simple blue dress and flat sandals, her hair loose falling over her shoulders. Harrison waited for her at a wheelchair-accessible table, wearing jeans and a white shirt, looking much more casual than at the event the night before. "You look beautiful," he said as she approached. "Thank you, and you're much more relaxed than yesterday," she observed, sitting down across from him. "This is more my style, actually," Harrison admitted. "Social events are a work obligation, not exactly my thing." They ordered a large margarita pizza and sodas, and the conversation flowed naturally. Harrison talked about his love for architecture and his frustration with corporate bureaucracy. Maya talked about her dream of one day opening a small flower shop and about how caring for her elderly mother gave her life meaning. "And your father?" Harrison asked gently. "He left when I was 15, Maya replied without bitterness. "He said he wasn't ready for the responsibility. My mother worked as a housekeeper for years to support me. It must have been difficult." It was, but it also taught us that we could only count on each other, and that made our bond very special. Harrison admired the way she talked about hardships without self-pity. There was a quiet strength in Maya that deeply impressed him. "And you? Are your parents still married?" she asked. "Yes, for 35 years. But it's not exactly a happy marriage, it's more of a social contract," he replied, surprising himself with his own honesty. "Why do you say that?" "They married for convenience, two traditional families joining assets. Love was never really part of the equation." Maya noticed a sadness in Harrison's voice when he talked about his family. It was clear that, despite all the apparent wealth, his emotional life had many voids. "Is that why you value genuine connections?" she asked. "Maybe," he admitted. "Yesterday, when you offered to dance with me, it was the first time in a long time that someone saw me as a person, not as a problem to be avoided." "Or as a bank account," Maya added, and immediately regretted the remark. "What do you mean by that?" Harrison asked, intrigued. Maya blushed. "Sorry, that was rude of me. It's just that you clearly have money, and I know a lot of people are interested in that." Harrison became thoughtful. He still hadn't told her the real extent of his wealth, and that was a good opportunity to be honest. "Maya, there's something I need to tell you," he began. "About what I do, about who I am." "You don't have to," she interrupted. "I don't care if you're rich or poor. What matters to me is that you're kind, intelligent, and make me feel special." Her sincerity completely disarmed him. Harrison decided to postpone the conversation about his true social standing. Not because he wanted to hide it, but because he wanted to enjoy a little longer, that feeling of being accepted for who he really was. They talked until the pizzeria closed, discovering shared tastes in movies, books, and music. When they finally said goodbye, both knew something special was beginning. In the following days, Harrison started going to the Beanery, downtown, where Maya worked during the day. It was a small, cozy establishment, frequented mainly by office workers from the area. He always asked to sit at the table she served, and gradually he became part of the place's routine. Initially, the other customers just watched him curiously, but as the days went by, some started making unpleasant comments. A middle-aged executive complained out loud about having to see that kind of thing during lunch. A group of secretaries whispered cruel comments about how the presence of the wheelchair was blocking traffic in the cafe. Maya always fired back at those remarks with firmness and politeness, but Harrison could see the discomfort his presence caused. He tried to talk to her about it, but Maya insisted she wasn't bothered by ignorant comments. "These people need to learn that the world wasn't made just for them," she would say, serving Harrison's coffee with a smile. The cafe's owner, Mr. Bennett, a 50-year-old man with an old-fashioned mindset, initially tolerated the situation because Maya was a good employee. But the pressure from regular customers began to get to him. Some threatened to find another place to eat lunch if the situation wasn't resolved. "Maya, I need to talk to you," Mr. Bennett said one afternoon, calling her aside. "Yes, Mr. Bennett? Look, you know I like your work, but these customers are complaining about your wheelchair-bound friend." Maya felt the anger rise. "He has a name, Harrison, and he's a customer like any other." "I understand, but he's scaring off other customers. You need to discourage him from coming here, or I'll have to take a more drastic step." "Are you threatening me?" Maya asked, incredulous. "I'm trying to protect your job," Mr. Bennett replied. "Think carefully about what matters most to you." That night, Maya went home troubled. She desperately needed her job, especially since Mrs. Martha's health was deteriorating. Over the past few months, her mother had lost a drastic amount of weight and felt constant pain in her abdomen. Maya suspected it was something serious, but they couldn't afford private medical tests, and the wait for public health care was endless. "What's going on, sweetheart?" Mrs. Martha asked, noticing Maya's worry. "Trouble at work, Mom." "Nothing I can't handle," Maya lied, not wanting to worry her mother. "Is it about that young man you've been seeing?" Maya was surprised. "How do you know about him?" "A mother always knows, sweetheart. And the way you talk about him, even without saying much, I can tell he's someone special." "He is, Mom, very special." "Then fight for it," Mrs. Martha said, touching her daughter's hand. "At my age, I've learned that special encounters are rare. Don't let other people destroy something good." The next day, when Harrison arrived at the cafe, Maya was visibly tense. She served him less naturally than usual, and he could tell something was wrong. "Maya, are you okay?" he asked, after she served his coffee. "I'm fine," she replied, but avoiding his gaze. "No, you're not. What happened?" Maya looked around, noticing the disapproving looks from the other customers and the stern expression on Mr. Bennett's face behind the counter. She made a painful decision. "Harrison, I think it would be best if you found another place to get coffee," she said, her voice trembling. "What do you mean?" he asked, genuinely confused. "It's just... things are complicated for me here at work," she explained, unable to give more details. Harrison understood immediately. He looked at the other customers, noticing the disapproving expressions and the whispers. His presence was causing problems for Maya. "I understand," he said, feeling the familiar ache of rejection. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." "It's not you," Maya tried to explain. "It's just that people are prejudiced." "I know," Harrison finished. "Don't worry, I completely understand." He paid for his coffee and left, leaving Maya with a horrible feeling in the pit of her stomach. She had hurt someone she cared about to protect her job, and it made her feel despicable. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us folks who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Harrison spent the following days immersed in work, trying to forget the disappointment. He focused on company meetings and projects, avoiding any social situation. But Maya wouldn't leave his thoughts. There was something about her that intrigued him, an honesty and warmth he rarely encountered. Meanwhile, Mrs. Martha's health was visibly declining. She had lost more weight and frequently complained of intense pain. Maya finally managed to schedule a private medical appointment using all her savings. The diagnosis was devastating: advanced stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor was straightforward about the need for urgent surgery as well as chemotherapy treatment. The costs were astronomical, far beyond what Maya could afford, even working day and night. "Doctor, is there any possibility of getting treatment through the public system?" Maya asked, trying to keep her composure. "There is, but the waiting list for this type of surgery is at least 8 months. And given your mother's current condition, I don't believe she has that long," the doctor replied with compassion. Maya left the office in a state of shock. 8 months was far too long. Mrs. Martha needed the surgery within 6 weeks at most, according to the doctor. She sat on a bench in the square across from the hospital and cried like she hadn't in years. 2 weeks had passed since Harrison stopped going to the Beanery. Maya was working 3 different jobs: at the cafe in the morning, cleaning offices in the afternoon, and waiting tables at night, trying to save up money for her mother's treatment. She was exhausted, but determined. It was during one of those grueling days that she ran into Harrison by chance. He was leaving a shopping center downtown when he saw her walking quickly along the sidewalk, carrying a heavy folder of work documents. "Maya," he called, maneuvering his wheelchair to get closer. She stopped, surprised and visibly embarrassed. She had deep dark circles under her eyes and had lost weight due to the stress and lack of time to eat properly. "Hi, Harrison," she said, trying to smile. "Are you okay? You look tired," he observed, concerned. "I'm just working a bit more, that's all," she replied evasively. "A bit more? Maya, it's almost 9 at night. You've been working all day." She hesitated, but the genuine concern in his voice touched her. Besides, she was so tired she couldn't keep up her composure for long. "My mother is sick," she finally admitted. "I need money for her treatment." "What does she have?" Harrison asked immediately. Maya hesitated again, but ended up telling him about the diagnosis and the urgent need for surgery. Harrison listened in silence, feeling a mix of compassion and indignation. "How much do you need?" he asked directly. "Harrison, no," Maya said, shaking her head. "I can't accept your money." "Why not? I can help." "Because it would be wrong. We barely know each other, and I don't want you to think I got close to you out of self-interest." Her sincerity deeply moved him. Even in despair, Maya held on to her dignity and principles. "What if it weren't a gift, but a loan?" he suggested. "I'd never be able to pay it back," she answered honestly. Harrison felt frustrated. He had more money than he could ever spend in several lifetimes, and here was a person who desperately needed help, but was too proud to accept it. "Maya, at least let me take you home. You're exhausted," she accepted, relieved not to have to face public transportation in that state. During the ride to the Bronx, Harrison saw for the first time how she really lived. The simple streets, the old buildings, a reality completely different from the one he knew. "It's here," she said when they arrived at the 4-story building where she lived. "Maya," Harrison said before she got out of the car, "if you change your mind about accepting help, call me, no matter what time." "Thank you, Harrison, really, but I'll find a way," she said, lightly kissing his cheek before stepping out. Harrison watched until she entered the building, feeling frustrated that he couldn't do more. He decided to discreetly look into treatment options for Mrs. Martha's type of cancer. Maybe he could find a way to help without Maya knowing. The next day, Mrs. Martha's condition worsened. She collapsed during the morning and was rushed to the public hospital. The doctors were clear. The surgery could no longer be postponed. It had to be done within a week, or the chances of success would drop drastically. Maya found herself in complete panic. Even working tirelessly, she had only managed to save a fraction of the amount needed. Sitting in the hospital waiting room, she finally decided to call Harrison. "Harrison, it's me, Maya," she said when he answered. "Maya, how are you? How's your mother?" "She's not doing well. She needs the surgery this week, she said, her voice breaking. Where are you? I'm on my way right now, he said immediately. At Metropolitan General Hospital. But Harrison, I can't accept your money. I just needed someone to talk to. I'm on my way, he said, hanging up before she could protest. Harrison arrived at the hospital half an hour later, finding Maya in the waiting room, with her eyes red from crying. She was holding hospital paperwork and trying to do calculations in an old notebook. How is she? He asked, sitting down beside her. Stable, but weak. The doctors said that if she doesn't have surgery by Friday... She couldn't finish the sentence. How much more do you need? Harrison pressed. $65,000, she replied, discouraged. It might seem like nothing to some people, but for me, it's impossible. Harrison was shocked. For him, $65,000 was an amount he'd spend on an afternoon of shopping. For Maya, it represented years of work. Maya, look at me, he said, turning to face her. I can take care of this right now, today. All you have to do is let me. I can't, Harrison. Like I said, I'd never be able to pay you back. And who said you need to? I do. I don't want to owe anything to anyone, especially not to you. Why, especially not to me? Maya hesitated, blushing. Because I like you. And I don't want our friendship to be based on money. Harrison felt his heart race. It was the first time she'd admitted having feelings for him. Maya, my feelings for you have nothing to do with money. If I help you, it's because I care about you and your mother. Not because I expect anything in return. But I'd feel terrible, she insisted, and you'd rather let your mother... He stopped, realizing he was being cruel. Maya lowered her head, torn between pride and desperation. It was the hardest decision of her life. If I accept, she said finally, it has to be a loan. I'll pay you back, even if it takes years. Deal, said Harrison, relieved. I'll arrange everything today. Within 2 hours, Harrison had transferred the money to the hospital and booked the best available medical team to operate on Mrs. Martha. Maya was shocked by how quickly and efficiently everything was resolved. How did you manage to do this so fast? She asked, intrigued. I have some contacts in the medical field, he replied evasively. The surgery was scheduled for the following day. Harrison stayed at the hospital throughout the entire procedure, which lasted 8 hours. Maya was extremely nervous, and his presence was an unexpected comfort. You don't have to stay here, she said when it was already 2 in the morning. Where else would I be? He replied simply. At 6 in the morning, the surgeon came out of the operating room with a tired smile. The surgery had been a success. The tumor had been completely removed, and Mrs. Martha's chances of recovery were excellent. Maya cried with relief in Harrison's arms, who felt a deep emotion at being able to bring her that happiness. It was the first time in a long while that his money had served something truly meaningful. Mrs. Martha remained hospitalized for 2 weeks. During that time, Harrison visited the hospital every day, bringing flowers, magazines, and little treats to brighten up the room. Mrs. Martha had been charmed by him since their first meeting. That young man is special, sweetheart, she would tell Maya. I've never seen anyone be so kind without expecting anything in return. He really is special, Mom, Maya agreed. And he likes you. Gets in his eyes when he looks at you. Maya smiled, feeling butterflies in her stomach every time Harrison showed up. Their relationship was deepening naturally, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. It was during one of those visits that Mrs. Martha asked Harrison a direct question. Harrison, my daughter told me you lent the money for my surgery. How can I ever thank you? Mrs. Martha, you don't need to thank me for anything. It was a pleasure to be able to help, he replied sincerely. But $65,000 isn't a small amount of money. You must be very well off. Harrison looked at Maya, who was curious about his answer. He decided it was time to be more honest. Yes, I'm financially comfortable, he admitted. I work in the construction industry. It wasn't a lie, but it also wasn't the whole truth. Maya sensed there was more he wasn't telling her, but she decided to respect his privacy. When Mrs. Martha was discharged, they organized a small gathering at home to celebrate. Harrison offered to pay for a private nurse to oversee her recovery, but Maya politely declined. "I can take care of her, Harrison. I already asked for time off from work," she said. "From jobs," he corrected. "You were working 3 jobs." "How do you know that?" she asked, surprised. Harrison realized he had revealed more than he should have. "You mentioned it once," he said, trying to sound casual. Maya looked at him suspiciously but didn't press the matter. She had noticed that Harrison sometimes seemed to know things she didn't remember telling him, as if he had somehow looked into her life. 2 weeks after Mrs. Martha's discharge, Maya went back to work at the beanery. Mr. Bennett greeted her with a strange expression. "Maya, there have been some changes here while you were away," he said. "What kind of changes?" she asked, worried. "The coffee shop was sold. The new owner wants to speak with all the employees this afternoon." Maya felt her stomach tighten. Changes in ownership usually meant layoffs, and she couldn't afford to lose her job right now, especially with the debt she owed Harrison. At 2 in the afternoon, all the employees gathered in the closed coffee shop to meet the new owner. Maya nearly fainted when she saw Harrison come through the front door, accompanied by a lawyer and an accountant. "Good afternoon, everyone," Harrison said, positioning his wheelchair in front of the group. "I'm Harrison Reed, the new owner of this establishment." Maya stared at him with an expression of shock and betrayal. Everything started to make sense. The speed with which he had gotten the money for the surgery, the knowledge he showed about her life, and now this. "I want to assure everyone that no jobs are at risk," Harrison continued. "In fact, I plan to make some improvements to the place and increase salaries." After the meeting, when all the employees had left, Maya remained to confront Harrison. "Who are you?" she asked, anger and confusion in her voice. "I'm Harrison Reed, exactly as I introduced myself," he replied calmly. "That's not an answer. You bought the beanery? How much did it cost?" $200,000, he admitted. $200,000? Harrison, what kind of construction job lets you spend that amount like it's pocket change? Harrison took a deep breath. It was time for the complete truth. "Maya, I own Reed Infrastructure, one of the largest construction companies in the country," he said. She looked at him as if she'd been struck by lightning. You're a millionaire?" "Yes," he replied simply. "And you didn't think it was important to tell me that?" she asked, indignant. "At first, it didn't seem relevant. Then I liked being treated like a normal person, not like a wealthy heir." "Normal person?" Maya exploded. "Harrison, you lied to me. You let me worry about paying $65,000 when to you that's literally pocket change." "I didn't lie," he defended himself. "I just didn't tell you everything." "It's the same thing. And buying the beanery. Was that to control me? It was to protect you. I found out that Mr. Bennett was going to fire you because of me. I couldn't let that happen." Maya felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. Everything she had lived through in the last few months had been an illusion. She wasn't an independent woman who had won a man's interest. She was a poor person being helped by a millionaire who pitied her. "I need to leave," she said, heading for the door. "Maya, wait," Harrison called, following her. "No, I need to think. I need to understand what's real and what's just your generosity," she said, leaving without looking back. Harrison stood alone in the beanery, knowing he had made a terrible mistake by not being completely honest from the start. He tried calling her several times over the following days, but Maya didn't answer. A week passed. Maya returned to work at the beanery because she needed the money, but she treated Harrison with cold professionalism whenever he appeared. She had thought a lot about the situation and reached a painful conclusion. Her relationship with Harrison was based on such a great inequality that it could never be genuine. "Maya, can we talk?" Harrison asked one afternoon after closing time. "There's nothing to talk about, Harrison," she replied, wiping down tables without looking at him. "Yes, there is. There's a lot to talk about." "Like what?" "About how you felt sorry for me and decided to help me. About how I'm just another one of your charity cases." "You know that's not it," he said, frustrated. "Do I?" "Harrison, you have millions of dollars. I can't even pay the rent on my apartment without working 3 jobs. How could this ever work?" "Because money doesn't matter when 2 people truly care about each other," he replied. Maybe it doesn't matter to you because you have so much. But for me, who has nothing, it's impossible to ignore that difference. Harrison tried to argue, but Maya had made her decision. She couldn't continue a relationship where she felt like a dependent person, no matter how much she cared about him. Over the following days, the routine at the Beanery changed drastically. Harrison had hired a renovation company to modernize the place, making it more accessible and comfortable. The changes were evident: access ramps, adapted restrooms, tables of different heights. It was clear that he was thinking of people with different types of physical limitations. "He's doing all of this because of you," Mr. Bennett commented to Maya. "It's not because of me." "It's because he's a good person," she replied, but inside she felt a mixture of gratitude and sadness. The improvements also included a salary increase for all employees and better working conditions. Maya couldn't deny that Harrison was being extraordinarily generous, but that only increased her sense of being indebted to him. It was during that period that something unexpected happened. Vanessa Thorne, Harrison's ex-fiancée, showed up at the Beanery one morning. She was exactly as Maya remembered her from the gala, elegant, well-dressed, and with an aura of superiority. She ordered a coffee and sat at a table near the counter, clearly expecting Maya to come wait on her. "You're Maya, aren't you?" Vanessa asked when she approached. "Yes," Maya replied cautiously. "I'm Vanessa Thorne. I think you've seen me before." "At the annual charity gala," Maya confirmed. "Exactly. Can I talk to you for a few minutes? It's about Harrison." Maya hesitated, but her curiosity won out. She sat down at the table, watching Vanessa carefully. "I heard you two are involved," Vanessa said. "Not anymore," Maya answered honestly. "Why not?" Maya was surprised by the direct question. "I don't think that's any of your business." "Maybe not, but I feel responsible, partly responsible for Harrison becoming so distrustful of people's feelings." "What do you mean?" Vanessa sighed, looking genuinely remorseful. "I abandoned him when he needed me most. Right after the accident, when he was vulnerable and scared, I took the easy way out." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Harrison has changed since he met you. Bradley mentioned it to me. He said he's never seen Harrison so animated and hopeful as he's been in the last few months." Maya felt her heart tighten. "Bradley? Your boyfriend?" "Ex-boyfriend," Vanessa corrected. "We broke up 3 weeks ago." "Why?" "Because I realized I was with him for the wrong reasons. Because it was easy. Because he always told me what I wanted to hear. Because I was running from my own prejudices about Harrison's disability." Maya fell silent, processing the information. "Maya, can I give you some advice?" Vanessa continued. "Harrison doesn't need your pity or gratitude. He needs someone who sees him as a whole man, capable of giving and receiving love. And from what I've heard, you're the first person who can do that." "But the social difference between us is too great," Maya protested. "So what? You think he cares about that? Harrison has always despised social conventions. If he took an interest in you, it's because he saw something special, not because he wanted to do charity." After Vanessa left, Maya was unsettled. Her words echoed in her mind, making her question her own reasons for pushing Harrison away. That night at home, she talked Martha about the situation. "Mom, what would you do in my place?" she asked. "Honey, at my age I've learned that true love is rare, and when it appears you have to fight for it," Mrs. Martha replied. "But what if people say I'm with him for his money?" "People are always going to talk, no matter what you do. The question is, do you care more about their opinion or your own happiness?" Maya thought about her mother's question all night. The next morning she made a decision. She arrived at the cafe earlier and found Harrison already there, overseeing the final details of the renovation. He looked tired and thinner, as if he hadn't been eating properly. "Harrison, can we talk?" she asked. He turned, surprised. "Of course." They sat at a table away from everyone, and Maya took a deep breath before speaking. "I talked to your ex-fiancée yesterday," she began. "Vanessa, what did she want?" "To talk about you, about us." Harrison tensed up. "What did she say?" "That you've changed since you met me." "That seems happier." "And what do you think about that?" "I think she's right, and I think I've changed too." For better or for worse? He asked with a half-smile. For better. Harrison, I pulled away because I was afraid. Afraid I wasn't good enough for you. Afraid our social difference would be a problem. Afraid people would think I was with you for your money. And now? Now I realize I was being selfish. I was thinking more about what others would say than about what we both feel. Harrison took her hand across the table. And what do you feel? That I really like you. That you make me want to be a better person. And that regardless of your money, you're the kindest and most interesting man I've ever met. Maya, he said, moved, you have no idea how much I've missed you. I've missed you too, she admitted. They sat in silence for a moment, just holding hands and looking at each other. Harrison, can I ask you something? She said finally. Anything. Next time, be honest with me from the start. It doesn't matter if you think the truth might scare me. I'd rather know who I'm getting involved with. I promise, he said. And Maya, can I ask you something else? What? Stop worrying so much about what others will think. You're an incredible woman, regardless of your bank account or mine. They decided to start the relationship over, but this time with total honesty between them. Harrison told her about his family, about the pressure he felt to only date within the same social circle, and about how trapped he felt by his business responsibilities. Maya, in turn, told him about her previous marriage, about the trauma of discovering she couldn't have children, and about her dreams and insecurities. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Their relationship gradually grew stronger. Harrison began visiting Maya's house regularly, developing a special bond with Mrs. Martha, who treated him like a son. The simplicity of the Collins household contrasted sharply with the luxury Harrison was used to, but he felt more at peace there than in his own home. This feels like a real family, he commented one night, after having dinner with them. What do you mean? Asked Maya. You actually talk to each other. You care about one another, you share problems and joys. In my house, everyone lives in their own world. Mrs. Martha looked at him with compassion. Son, you can always consider this house your home too. The generosity and warmth of the Collins family touched Harrison deeply. For the first time, he experienced what it meant to have a real home, not just an expensive house. However, the Reed family was beginning to suspect there was someone special in Harrison's life. He had changed his routine, seemed happier, and often turned down social invitations for personal commitments. Mrs. Eleanor Reed, Harrison's mother, decided to investigate. She discreetly hired a private investigator to find out who her son was seeing. The report that reached her hands was a bombshell. Maya Collins, 25 years old, waitress, divorced, resident of the Bronx, daughter of a housekeeper, and, worst of all in Mrs. Eleanor's opinion, unable to have children due to a medical condition. Charles, she called to her husband as soon as she finished reading the report, we have a serious problem. Charles Reed, a 60-year-old man accustomed to controlling every aspect of life through money, listened to his wife's account with growing irritation. How can our son get involved with someone so unsuitable? He questioned. Unsuitable isn't the word, replied Mrs. Eleanor. A sterile waitress? This is unacceptable. They decided to confront Harrison directly. They scheduled a mandatory family dinner for that Friday, intending to resolve the situation once and for all. Harrison arrived at dinner wary. His parents rarely summoned him to family meals, preferring the respectful distance that characterized their relationship. Harrison, we need to talk about your personal life, Charles began after the main course. My personal life? Why? Harrison asked cautiously. We know you're involved with someone unsuitable, Mrs. Eleanor said bluntly. Unsuitable how? Harrison asked, feeling his anger rise. A waitress, Harrison, Charles said, as if the profession were a disease. A woman with no education, no family, no social standing. And worse, Mrs. Eleanor added, a woman who can't give you children. How do you intend to carry on the Reed bloodline? Harrison was stunned. How did they know about Maya's infertility? That was deeply personal information she rarely shared. How did you find out about that? He asked. We had her investigated, Charles admitted without hesitation. "It was our duty to know who our son is involved with." "You had Maya investigated?" Harrison exploded. "How dare you? We had to protect you," Mrs. Eleanor defended herself. "Obviously that woman is only after your money. You don't know Maya. She's always refused my financial help. She works 3 jobs to support her sick mother." "Exactly," Charles said triumphantly. "A woman in financial desperation. It's obvious she saw you as an opportunity." Harrison rose from the table, trembling with rage. "You are completely wrong about her." "Harrison," Mrs. Eleanor said, shifting to a more conciliatory tone, "you've been emotionally vulnerable since the accident. It's natural to feel grateful to anyone who shows you interest. But you need to think rationally." "Rationally?" Harrison repeated in disbelief. "Mom, I'm in love with Maya. She's the most genuine and courageous person I've ever met." "In love?" Charles shook his head. "Harrison, infatuation fades. Family responsibilities last forever." "What family responsibilities? Managing the money? Keeping up the social reputation?" "Carrying on the Reed family," Mrs. Eleanor replied, "and that woman can't do that." "Maybe I don't want to carry on the Reed family," Harrison said, surprising everyone, including himself. "What do you mean by that?" Charles asked, alarmed. "That maybe I don't want to live a life dictated by social expectations and family obligations. That maybe I want to choose my own happiness." "Harrison, you're being irrational," Mrs. Eleanor insisted. "This phase will pass." "This phase? Mom, I'm 28 years old. I'm not a child you can control anymore." "As long as you are the heir to this family, yes, we can steer your decisions," Charles declared firmly. The threat was implicit, but clear. Harrison understood that his parents were willing to go to great lengths to end his relationship with Maya. "Are you giving me an ultimatum?" he asked. "We're asking you to be sensible," Mrs. Eleanor replied. "End that inappropriate relationship and find someone suitable to marry." "And if I refuse?" Charles and Mrs. Eleanor exchanged a knowing look. "We hope you won't be so reckless," Charles said finally. Harrison left his parents' house that night, knowing a war had been declared. He drove straight to Maya's place, needing the comfort of her presence. "Harrison, what a surprise," Mrs. Martha said when she opened the door. "Maya's in her room, putting some things away." He found Maya organizing clothes she had just washed. She smiled when she saw him, but soon realized something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, setting down the clothes. Harrison told her about dinner with his parents, about the investigation they had ordered, about the accusations and the implicit ultimatum. Maya listened to everything in growing silence. "Do they know about my medical condition?" she asked finally. "They do. I'm sorry, Maya. I never imagined they would do something like this." Maya sat on the bed, visibly shaken. The thought that strangers knew something so intimate about her life made her feel vulnerable and exposed. "And what did you tell them?" she asked. "That I'm in love with you. That they are completely wrong about who you are." "Harrison," she said calmly, "maybe they're right." "What do you mean?" "Maybe our social difference really is an insurmountable problem. Maybe it's better we end this before it causes more damage." "Maya, no, please don't let them win," Harrison pleaded. "It's not about letting them win, it's about being realistic. Harrison, your family has millions of dollars. They can make our lives a living hell if they want to. They can't separate us if we don't allow it. Yes, they can, in ways we can't even imagine." That night, Maya barely managed to sleep. She thought of all the ways Harrison's family could affect her life, her job, her mother's health, future opportunities. People with that level of power had resources she couldn't even fathom. The next day, her concern proved justified. Maya arrived at the beanery and found Mr. Bennett waiting for her with a worried expression. "Maya, I received a strange call this morning," he said. "What kind of call?" "An elegant woman said she was Eleanor Reed. Wanted to know about your behavior at work, your punctuality, things like that." Maya felt her blood run cold. "What did you say?" "That you're an exemplary employee, of course. But it seems strange to me. Why would anyone be investigating you?" "I don't know," Maya lied. Throughout the day, she received more evidence that she was being watched. The doorman of her building mentioned that well-dressed people had asked about her. Mrs. Martha's doctor called saying someone had tried to obtain information about her treatment. It was clear the Reed family was putting together a complete file on her life, probably looking for something they could use against her. When Harrison showed up at the coffee shop in the afternoon, Maya led him to talk privately in the back. "Your family is investigating me," she said bluntly. "What do you mean?" Maya told him about the suspicious calls and visits. Harrison was furious. "They can't do this," he exploded. "They can and they are. Harrison, this only confirms what I said yesterday. They won't stop until they separate us." "Maya, let's leave," he said impulsively. "Let's go to another city, another state. We start a new life far away from here. And abandon my mother, my job, my entire life. I'll take care of everything. I can transfer your mother's treatment, arrange a job for you." "Harrison, are you hearing what you're saying? You want me to give up everything and depend completely on you?" He stopped, realizing how his proposal sounded. "No, I didn't mean it that way." "Yes, you did. And you know why? Because you're used to solving everything with money. But I'm not a problem you can solve by buying the solution." The argument was interrupted by the arrival of a man in a suit who identified himself as a lawyer for the Reed family. "Miss Collins, my name is Mr. Samuel Vance. I represent the Reed family in delicate matters," he said, extending a card. "What do you want?" Maya asked suspiciously. "I would like to have a civilized conversation with you." "About your relationship with Harrison Reed." "Anything you have to say, you can say in front of Harrison," she replied. The lawyer looked at Harrison and then back at Maya. "Very well. The Reed family would like to propose an arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" asked Harrison, indignant. "An arrangement that would benefit everyone involved," the lawyer replied diplomatically. "Miss Collins would receive a substantial financial settlement in exchange for ending her relationship with young Harrison." Maya was shocked. "Are you trying to buy me off?" "We are offering a civilized solution to a complicated situation," the lawyer corrected. "How much?" she asked, with growing anger. $500,000, the lawyer replied calmly. Harrison exploded. "Mr. Vance, you're fired immediately." "Harrison, I don't work for you. I work for your parents," the lawyer replied serenely. "And I refuse the offer," said Maya firmly. "Now get out of my face." "Miss Collins," the lawyer insisted, "I suggest you think carefully about the offer. $500,000 could solve many problems in your life." "And create many others," she shot back. After the lawyer left, Maya and Harrison sat in silence, processing what had happened. $500,000, Maya murmured. "Your family really does see me as an expensive prostitute." "Maya, don't talk like that," Harrison pleaded. "But it's true, isn't it? To them, every woman has a price, and apparently mine is $500,000. "You turned down the offer," Harrison reminded her. "I did. But that doesn't change the fact that your family is willing to go to great lengths to tear us apart." That night, Maya talked to Mrs. Martha about the situation. Her mother listened to everything in silence with a thoughtful expression. "Sweetheart, can I ask you a question?" said Mrs. Martha finally. "Of course, Mom." "Do you love Harrison?" "Yes, Mom, very much." "And does he love you?" "I think so." "Then why are you letting other people control your lives?" Maya was taken aback by the question. "Mom, it's not that simple." "Yes, it is, sweetheart. In life we have two options, fight for what we want or give up and let others decide for us. But his family has so much power. So what? They have power over their money, over their companies, but they don't have power over your feelings, unless you hand that power over to them." The conversation with her mother made Maya reflect deeply. Maybe Mrs. Martha was right. Maybe she was handing over control of her life to people who didn't even know her. The next day, she made a decision. Instead of passively waiting for the Reed family's next attack, she decided to take the initiative. Maya dressed in her best outfit, a simple yet elegant navy blue dress, and headed to the Reed Infrastructure office. She hadn't told Harrison, wanting to handle the situation on her own. The company building was imposing, with 20 floors of glass and steel in downtown New York City. Maya felt small as she entered the marble lobby, but she held her resolve. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Charles and Mrs. Eleanor Reed," she told the receptionist. "Do you have an appointment?" asked the receptionist, eyeing Maya from head to toe with obvious disapproval. "No, but I believe they'll want to see me. I'm Maya Collins." The receptionist made a hushed phone call, and to Maya's surprise authorized her to go up to the top floor. Maya was received in Charles Reed's office, a luxurious space with a panoramic view of the city. Charles was behind a massive mahogany desk, and Mrs. Eleanor occupied a leather armchair beside him. "Miss Collins?" said Charles without getting up. "What a surprise." "Good afternoon," Maya replied, keeping her head held high. "I imagine you've come to respond to our offer," said Mrs. Eleanor. "Actually, I came to make a counter-proposal," Maya said, surprising the couple. "What do you mean?" Charles asked, intrigued. "You want me to stay away from Harrison. I want you to stop interfering in his life." "That's ridiculous," said Mrs. Eleanor. "We're his family. And I'm the person he chose to love. That should mean something." Charles stood up and walked to the window. "Miss Collins, you seem like an intelligent young woman. Surely you understand that Harrison can offer much more to society if he marries someone from the same social class." "Why? Because someone wealthy is automatically a better person. Because someone from the same class shares the same values, the same upbringing, the same responsibilities," Mrs. Eleanor explained. "And what values are those? Controlling your children's lives? Buying people? Judging others by their bank account?" "Miss Collins," Charles said, turning to face her, "you're being insolent." "I'm being honest. You want to know the difference between me and someone from your social class? I work for everything I have. I take care of my mother without hiring other people to do it. I value people for who they are, not what they own." Mrs. Eleanor laughed coldly. "What a pretty speech. But let's get down to practical matters. Can you give my son children?" The question hit Maya like a slap in the face. For a moment, her resolve wavered. "No," she answered simply. "Then how do you intend to carry on the Reed family name?" "Maybe through love, through compassion, through building something more meaningful than simply producing heirs." "That's very poetic," Charles said. "But we're talking about reality, about concrete responsibilities. And what if Harrison doesn't want those responsibilities?" "Then he will no longer be our son," Mrs. Eleanor said coldly. Maya was shocked by the cruelty of the statement. "You would really do that? Abandon your own son?" "We would protect him from himself," Charles corrected, "and from the influence of unsuitable people." "People like me." "Exactly." Maya took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. "You know what saddens me most about all of this? It's not that you disapprove of me. It's that you have no idea who Harrison really is." "What do you mean?" Mrs. Eleanor asked. "You only see him as an heir, a continuation of the family business. But he's so much more than that. He's kind, courageous, intelligent. He has his own dreams, his own fears, a unique personality, and you've never bothered to get to know that person." Charles and Mrs. Eleanor fell silent. "Harrison told me you never asked how he felt after the accident," Maya continued. "You never asked if he was scared, if he needed emotional support. You just assumed he would get through it because Reeds are strong." "The accident was a difficult time for all of us," Mrs. Eleanor defended herself. "Not for everyone, for Harrison. And he went through it practically alone because his fiancée abandoned him, and his parents were too worried about the company to give him the support he needed." The remark clearly struck a nerve with the couple, who for the first time seemed genuinely uncomfortable. "Miss Collins," Charles said finally, "even if your observations have some merit, that doesn't change the fundamental fact. You two aren't compatible." "We're not compatible, or we're not convenient for you," Maya shot back. "It's the same thing," Mrs. Eleanor replied. "No, it's not. And that's where you're wrong about Harrison. He doesn't want convenience. He wants authenticity. He wants someone who loves him for who he is, not what he represents." Maya stood up to leave. "I came here because I wanted to understand you. I wanted to see if there was a possibility of dialogue, of mutual respect." "And what's your conclusion?" Charles asked. "You're willing to destroy your own son's happiness to keep up your social conventions. And that's sadder than anything you could ever think about me." She headed for the door but stopped before leaving. Oh, and about the $500,000 offer. It wasn't just offensive, it was pathetic. Do you really think love can be bought with money? After Maya left, Charles and Mrs. Eleanor sat in silence for several minutes. She's smarter than we thought, Charles finally remarked. And more dangerous, Mrs. Eleanor added. A poor person with principles is harder to control than a poor person without them. What do we do now? We raise the pressure. If we can't buy her, we'll isolate her. In the following days, Maya began to feel the weight of that escalation. Her second job, office cleaning, was cancelled without explanation. The hospital where Mrs. Martha received her follow-up care started creating bureaucratic obstacles to renewing her treatment plan. Even the gas supplier for the apartment presented inexplicable problems. It was subtle but constant pressure, creating a climate of insecurity and instability in Maya's life. She realized the Reed family had far more power than she had imagined. Harrison, for his part, was also facing pressure. His access to certain company accounts was blocked. Important meetings were scheduled without him being notified. His authority as CEO was being systematically undermined. "They're trying to force me to choose," Harrison told Maya one night. "And what are you going to do?" "Fight. I'm not going to let them control my life." "Harrison, maybe it's better if—" "No," he interrupted. "Maya, I'm not giving up on you, on us, no matter what they do." But the pressure was taking its toll. Maya was constantly tense, worrying about what difficulty would come next. Harrison was frustrated and angry, feeling powerless against his parents' manipulations. The situation reached its breaking point when Mrs. Martha got sick at work and was rushed to the hospital. The doctors said it was just stress, but Maya knew her mother was being affected by the constant tension that hung over the house. "Sweetheart," Mrs. Martha said from her hospital bed, "this war has to stop." "I know, Mum. But I don't know how." "By talking. Civilized people solve problems by talking. I already tried talking to Harrison's family. They won't listen." "Then maybe it's time for Harrison to talk to them. For real this time." Maya reflected on her mother's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time for Harrison to take a definitive stand with his family. When she suggested it to Harrison, he agreed immediately. He was tired of the conflict too, and wanted to resolve the situation once and for all. Harrison scheduled a meeting with his parents for the weekend. This time, he would be the one setting the terms of the conversation. "Dad, Mom," Harrison began, as they sat down in the living room of the family mansion. "I came here to end this ridiculous war you've declared against Maya." "Harrison," Mrs. Eleanor began, "we only want what's best for you." "No, you don't. You want whatever's most convenient for the family's image. And there's a big difference. Son," Charles said, "you're still young. You don't understand the complexities of social relations. Dad, I'm 28 years old. I have a degree in business administration, and I run a company with thousands of employees. I think I can choose who I want to be with." "But that choice affects more than just you," Mrs. Eleanor argued. "How? In what way does my relationship with Maya affect anyone besides me?" Charles and Mrs. Eleanor exchanged glances, realizing they didn't have a convincing answer to that question. "Harrison," Mrs. Eleanor tried, "you have responsibilities to the family." "What responsibilities, specifically? My marriage to someone you approve of? Having children to continue the lineage? Maintaining social appearances?" "Yes," Charles exploded. "Exactly that. And what if I don't want those responsibilities?" "Then you stop being a Reed," Charles declared coldly. "Perfect," Harrison said, standing up. "That's exactly what I came here to say." Charles and Mrs. Eleanor were in shock. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Eleanor asked, turning pale. "I'm renouncing the inheritance, the presidency of the company, the last name, if necessary. I no longer want to be part of a family that values money and status more than love and happiness." "Harrison, you can't be serious," Charles said, alarmed. "I'm completely serious. I'm going to sell my shares in the company and start my own life. With Maya." "Son, you're being irrational," Mrs. Eleanor pleaded. "I'm choosing freedom. For the first time in my life, I'm making choices based on what I want, not on what you expect." "Harrison," Charles said, playing his last card, Do you think that woman is going to stay with you when she finds out you don't have any money anymore? First, that woman has a name, Maya. Second, she always knew I had money, and yet she always refused my help. Third, even after selling the shares, I'll still have enough money to live comfortably. But it won't be the same, Mrs. Eleanor protested. No, it won't. It will be better. It will be a life I chose, not one that was imposed on me. Harrison headed for the door but turned around one last time. Do you know what the most ironic part of all this is? If you had tried to get to know Maya, if you had given her a chance, maybe you would have discovered that she's exactly the kind of person you'd want in the family. She's hard-working, honest, loyal, brave. But you were too worried about what other people would think to notice that. After Harrison left, Charles and Mrs. Eleanor sat in absolute silence. For the first time in a long time, they wondered if they had gone too far. Harrison went straight from his parents' house to Maya's apartment. She was preparing dinner when he arrived, still worked up from the family confrontation. How did it go? She asked, seeing his expression. I said everything I wanted to say, he replied, and I made a decision. What decision? I'm leaving the company, selling my shares, starting a new life. Maya stopped cooking and looked directly at him. Harrison, are you sure? That's a very drastic decision. It's the right decision. Maya, I don't want to live a life dictated by others. I want to live my own life. With you. She approached him and gently touched his face. What if you regret it? What if you miss all of this? Impossible. Maya, before I met you, I felt like a prisoner in a life of luxury. Now, I know what it means to be truly happy. But your parents... My parents made a choice. They chose money and status over their son. Now, I'm making my choice. That night, they stayed up late, talking about their plans for the future. Harrison had ideas for starting an architecture firm focused on social projects, affordable housing, community centers, accessible public spaces. It was something he'd always been interested in, but could never pursue because of family obligations. What about you? What would you like to do? He asked Maya. I've always dreamed of having a flower shop, she admitted. Something small, cozy, a place where people could buy flowers to celebrate special moments. Then let's make it happen, Harrison said, smiling. Harrison, are you sure? We're talking about leaving a life of millions to start from scratch. Not from scratch, together. And that makes all the difference. In the following days, Harrison began the process of selling his shares of Reed Infrastructure. It was a complex procedure, involving lawyers and accountants, but he was determined. The news spread quickly in New York City's social circles. The heir to Reed Infrastructure was getting rid of his inheritance over a waitress. Reactions ranged from shock to outrage, with a touch of morbid fascination. Maya felt the weight of those stares and comments every time she left the house. Some people treated her with curiosity, others with disdain, and still others with a mix of admiration and envy. Do you regret anything? Mrs. Martha asked one morning, watching her daughter. About what, Mom? Getting involved with Harrison, causing all this commotion. Maya thought for a moment. No, Mom. I don't regret it. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm truly living, not just surviving. Even with all the difficulties? The difficulties have always been there, Mom. The difference is that now I have someone to face them with. 3 weeks after Harrison's decision, something unexpected happened. Vanessa Thorne showed up at Maya's apartment asking to talk. I know it might seem strange for me to be here, Vanessa said, but there's something I need to tell you about Harrison's family. Maya received her with caution, still wary of Vanessa's motives. What do you want? Maya asked. To help. In some way, Vanessa replied. Maya, I made many mistakes with Harrison. I abandoned him when he needed support the most. And now I see what you two are going through, and I feel partially responsible. What do you mean? If I hadn't abandoned Harrison after the accident, maybe he wouldn't have become so emotionally vulnerable. Maybe the family wouldn't have so much power over him. Maya was surprised by Vanessa's honesty. And what do you plan to do about it? First, I want you to know that the Reed family is going through an internal crisis. Charles and Eleanor are panicking at the possibility of Harrison actually leaving the company. How do you know that? Bradley still has contacts in the company. He told me the board of directors is pressuring Charles to resolve the situation. And what does that mean? That maybe they're more open to negotiation than they seem. Maya looked thoughtful. But what do you gain by helping us? The chance to redeem myself. And maybe the possibility of winning Harrison's friendship again in the future. Vanessa, do you still have feelings for him? I do, but not romantic ones, she admitted. I love him as a person, as a friend who was an important part of my life. And I know the best way to show that love is by helping him be happy. The conversation with Vanessa gave Maya a new perspective on the situation. Maybe there was a way to resolve the conflict without Harrison having to give up everything. That night she talked to Harrison about Vanessa's visit. She came to offer you help, Harrison asked, surprised. She did, and I think we should consider it. Maya, I don't want Vanessa involved in this. She's already caused enough pain. Harrison, sometimes people change and maybe she's genuinely sorry. Even if she is, I've already made my decision. I'm leaving the company. And what if there were another way? What if your parents were willing to accept our relationship? Harrison was silent, considering the possibility. Do you think it's worth trying? He finally asked. I think it's worth at least talking. If it doesn't work out, you go ahead with your original plan. Harrison reluctantly agreed to meet with Vanessa to hear what she had to say. They met at a neutral cafe, away from curious eyes. Harrison, began Vanessa, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I want to help you. Why? He asked directly. Because I made a terrible mistake when I abandoned you. Because I saw how happy you are with Maya. And because I know your family is wrong. My family has always been wrong about many things, Harrison replied bitterly, but this time they're scared. Scared of losing you, scared of losing control, scared of admitting they were wrong. And what do you propose? A meeting, mediated, where everyone can speak openly, without ultimatums or threats. Vanessa, that won't work. My parents have already made their position clear. People can change their position when they realize they're about to lose something important, and you are the most important thing in their lives, even if they have a strange way of showing it. Harrison grew thoughtful. The idea of one last attempt at dialogue appealed to him, even though he was skeptical about the outcome. And you? What do you get out of organizing this? He asked. Peace of mind, and maybe one day your friendship back. Vanessa, Harrison said calmly, I can forgive you for what happened, but I can't forget. Our friendship. That's going to take a long time to rebuild, if it's even possible. I understand, she replied, and I don't expect anything beyond that. I just want to do the right thing this time. Harrison agreed to the meeting, but with one condition. Maya had to be present. It was a bold condition, since it would force the Reed family to directly face the person they so despised. The meeting was set for the following Saturday at Vanessa's house, neutral territory that wouldn't favor either side. Vanessa offered to mediate the conversation, using her public relations skills to keep the dialogue civil. On the morning of the meeting, Maya was extremely nervous. She chose a simple but elegant dress, wanting to make a respectful impression without seeming like she was trying to impress. Are you sure you want to do this? Asked Mrs. Martha, seeing her daughter's anxiety. No, Mom, but I know I have to, Maya replied. Remember, sweetheart, you are no less than anyone. You have just as much right to happiness as anyone else. Maya and Harrison arrived together at Vanessa's house, an elegant but unpretentious residence in the Greenwich Village neighborhood. Charles and Mrs. Eleanor were already there, sitting stiffly on the living room sofa. The tension in the air was palpable. No one knew exactly how to start that conversation. Well, Vanessa finally said, I think we all know why we're here. We have a situation that's causing suffering for everyone involved, and we need to find a solution. The solution is simple, said Mrs. Eleanor coldly. Harrison comes to his senses and ends this inappropriate relationship. Mom, Harrison interrupted, Maya is present. At least have the courtesy to treat her with respect. Charles looked at Maya as if seeing her for the first time. Miss Collins, he said formally. Mr. Reed, she replied with equal formality. Perhaps, Vanessa suggested, each person can express their feelings and concerns without interruptions, starting with Harrison. Harrison took a deep breath. Very well. Dad, Mom, I love Maya. This isn't a passing infatuation. It's not gratitude. It's not rebellion. It's true love. She makes me want to be a better person. She accepts me exactly as I am, with all my limitations and flaws. He paused, looking directly at his parents. For 2 years since the accident, I felt like half a man, rejected, diminished, an object of pity. Maya was the first person who saw me as a complete man, capable of loving and being loved. Mrs. Eleanor was about to interrupt, but Vanessa stopped her with a gesture. Continuing, Harrison said, I understand that you have expectations for my life, but they're your expectations, not mine. I don't want to marry for social convenience. I don't want to have children just to continue a bloodline. I want to build a life based on love and mutual respect. Now it's Miss Collins's turn, said Vanessa. Maya was trembling, but her voice came out steady. Mr. and Mrs. Reed, I didn't come here to ask for your approval. I came because Harrison wants to try to rebuild his relationship with you, and I respect that. She paused, organizing her thoughts. You believe I'm with Harrison for his money. I understand why you'd think that. Our social difference is obvious, but you're wrong. Prove it, Charles challenged. I've always refused his financial help. When my mother was sick and needed urgent surgery, it took me weeks to accept a loan. When he offered to pay for my studies, I refused. When he wants to buy me expensive gifts, I turn them down. That could be a strategy, commented Mrs. Eleanor. It could be, Maya agreed, but it isn't. And you know how I can prove it? Because I'm willing to sign any legal document waiving all rights to Harrison's assets. That surprised everyone in the room, including Harrison. Maya, he said, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do, if it eases your parents' concerns, she replied. Mr. and Mrs. Reed, I don't want your money, I don't want your company. I don't want your social status, I only want Harrison, and I want him to have a family that supports him, even if that family includes someone like me. Now it was Charles's turn to speak. Miss Collins, even if we accept your motives as sincere, the fact remains that you two are socially incompatible. Why does that matter? She asked. Because Harrison has social responsibilities, events, commitments, relationships that are essential to the business. And I can't learn to handle those situations. You can try, said Mrs. Eleanor condescendingly, but it will never come naturally to you. You're right, Maya surprised her. It will never be natural. But you know what is natural for me. Loving your son, supporting his dreams, standing by his side in difficult times. Isn't that what a wife should do? Charles and Mrs. Eleanor fell silent. And there's something else, Maya continued. You're worried that I can't give you grandchildren. It's true I can't have biological children, but there are other ways to build a family. Adoption, for example. It's not the same thing, Mrs. Eleanor protested. Why not? Can't an adopted child be loved as much as a biological one? Doesn't an orphaned child deserve a loving family? The question caught Mrs. Eleanor off guard. She had no convincing answer. And now, said Vanessa, it's time for Mr. and Mrs. Reed to express their feelings. Charles stood up and walked to the window, organizing his thoughts. Harrison, he began, you're our only son, our only chance at family continuity. When you were born, we dreamed about your life, your achievements, the future of the Reed family. He turned to face his son. The accident already destroyed many of our dreams. Seeing you in a wheelchair, physically limited, was painful for us too. Maybe we didn't show that properly. It was the first time Charles admitted being emotionally affected by the accident. When you got involved with Miss Collins, he continued, we felt like we were losing you completely, not just physically, but socially, familiarly. But you're not losing me, said Harrison. You're gaining a daughter-in-law. A daughter-in-law we can't understand, admitted Mrs. Eleanor. Harrison, we were raised in a very specific world, where people marry within the same class, where relationships are predictable. So what, Mom? That doesn't mean this world is the only right one. It's hard to change at our age, she said defensively. No one is asking you to change completely, Maya interjected. Just to accept that Harrison has the right to choose his own happiness. And what if that choice is a mistake? Asked Mrs. Eleanor. Then it will be my mistake, Harrison replied, and I'll deal with the consequences. But at least it will be my choice. The conversation continued for another 2 hours, with moments of tension interspersed with moments of mutual understanding. Gradually it became clear that despite all their differences, everyone there wanted the same thing: Harrison's happiness. "Very well," Charles said finally. "I propose the following: a 6-month trial period." "What do you mean?" asked Harrison. 6 months during which you stay with the company, continue with your family responsibilities, but also maintain your relationship with Miss Collins. And after 6 months? We reassess the situation. If it truly works, if she can adapt to our world and you can maintain your responsibilities, we'll consider making our approval official. And if it doesn't work? Asked Maya. Then you'll have 6 months to convince yourselves you were right, and we'll have 6 months to convince ourselves we were wrong, Mrs. Eleanor replied. Harrison looked at Maya, who nodded discreetly. I accept, he said, but with some conditions. Which ones? Maya has to be treated with respect. No investigations, threats, or attempts at bribery. Accepted, said Charles. And I want autonomy to make decisions at the company. No sabotage or obstruction. Accepted as long as your decisions are rational and beneficial to the business. Deal, said Harrison. The meeting ended with a tense but workable agreement. It wasn't what either side truly wanted, but it was a compromise everyone could live with. In the following days, Maya began preparing for the challenges the next 6 months would bring. She knew she would be constantly watched, judged for every word and action. Do you think it will work out? Asked Mrs. Martha. I don't know, Mom, but it's worth trying. And if it doesn't work out, then at least we'll know we tried everything. And Harrison won't have to regret not fighting for his family. The first test came sooner than expected. The Reed family had an important social engagement, a charity dinner for New York City's high society. Harrison was informed that Maya should accompany him as his official date. It's a trap, Harrison told Maya when he told her about the event. Maybe, she agreed, but it's also an opportunity to show that I can behave appropriately in that kind of situation. Maya, these people can be cruel. If you say something wrong, if you use the wrong fork. Harrison, she interrupted, do you think I've never been in difficult social situations? I've worked elite events for years. I know how to behave. But this time will be different. You won't be the invisible staff member. You'll be the center of attention. Then I'd better be prepared. Maya spent the following week studying social etiquette, practicing casual conversation, and choosing the right dress. Harrison helped her with information about the other guests, their personalities, and interests. On the day of the event, Maya was nervous but determined. She chose a simple yet elegant navy blue dress with discreet jewelry borrowed from Vanessa. Her hair was styled in a sophisticated bun, and her makeup was subtle but flawless. You look beautiful, Harrison said when he picked her up. I'm terrified, she admitted. It's going to be fine. And remember, you have just as much right to be there as anyone else. The event was at the Plaza Hotel, one of the most exclusive hotels in New York City. Mariana felt small as she entered the main ballroom, but she kept her posture straight and her smile discreet. The reactions to her presence were varied. Some guests looked at her with curiosity, others with thinly veiled disdain. A few seemed genuinely interested in meeting her. Harrison, introduce us to your date, said an elderly woman Mariana recognized as one of the matriarchs of New York society. Mrs. Helena, this is Maya Collins, Harrison said respectfully. Maya, what a beautiful name, said Mrs. Helena, examining her from head to toe. And what do you do for a living, dear? I work in the service industry, Maya answered diplomatically. How interesting. And where did you study? It was a trap question. Maya knew her public education wouldn't impress anyone there. I went to public school, Mrs. Helena, and I graduated while working and helping my mother, she answered honestly. How admirable, said Mrs. Helena, but her tone suggested otherwise. The night continued with several similar conversations. Maya answered every question with honesty and dignity, even when they were clearly meant to embarrass her. The hardest moment came when a businessman known for his arrogance made a cruel comment about people who don't know their place. Maya felt her blood boil, but she kept her composure. Mr. Carvalho, she said calmly, I believe everyone here knows their place very well. Mine, for example, is by the side of the man I love, supporting him and being supported by him. The clever, classy response silenced the man and impressed everyone present. Charles and Mrs. Eleanor watched everything from afar, analyzing each of Maya's interactions. They had to admit she was doing better than they had expected. She's more resilient than we imagined, Mrs. Eleanor commented to her husband. And smarter, Charles added. She didn't let herself be provoked even once. The real test came when Maya was approached by a group of socialites known for their cruelty disguised as politeness. Maya, isn't it? Said the group's leader, a woman in her 40s with a fake smile. So nice to finally meet you. We've heard so much about you. I hope good things, Maya answered cautiously. Oh, yes, it's so romantic, that love story between people from different worlds. I don't see it as different worlds, said Maya. I see it as two people who complement each other. How lovely, said another woman in the group. And tell us, what is it like for you to be in an environment like this? It must be quite different from what you're used to. It was another trap question, meant to make her admit discomfort or inadequacy. It is different, Maya admitted. But different doesn't mean better or worse, just different. There's beauty in simplicity, just as there's beauty in elegance. What an interesting philosophy, said the first woman, with thinly disguised sarcasm. And your plans for the future? Do you intend to keep working? I intend to keep growing, Maya answered. As a person, as a partner, as a contributor to society, in whatever way is most fitting and meaningful. The women exchanged glances, realizing they wouldn't be able to embarrass her easily. The night ended with Maya having passed every social test. She had maintained her elegance and dignity even under pressure, impressing even the harshest critics. In the car, heading home, Harrison was beaming with pride. You were perfect, he said. Simply perfect. It was hard, Maya admitted. Some of those people were deliberately cruel. And you handled them with more class than they deserved. Harrison, can I ask you something? Do you really want to be part of this world? Are these people your friends? Harrison thought for a moment. No, they're not my friends. These are acquaintances, business contacts, people I need to interact with professionally. I have very few true friends. Then why is this important? Why does their approval matter? For my parents it does, and if I want to have a relationship with my family, I need to find a balance. Maya understood. Harrison was trying to build bridges, not burn them all. Over the following days, reactions to the event reached them through various channels. Some people made positive comments about Maya's elegance and intelligence. Others remained skeptical. But significantly, no one had managed to find serious flaws in her behavior. Charles and Mrs. Eleanor were surprised by the positive comments they received about Maya. Mrs. Helena, the society matriarch, even praised the young woman of character that Harrison had chosen. Maybe we underestimated her, Mrs. Eleanor admitted to her husband. Maybe, Charles agreed, but it's still too early to draw definitive conclusions. The second big test came a few weeks later when Harrison had to travel to Chicago for work and decided to take Maya. It was the first time they traveled together and also the first time Maya would leave New York City. The trip had mixed purposes. Harrison had business meetings during the day, and they would take the opportunity to spend time together, exploring the city in their spare time. Have you ever been to Illinois? Harrison asked during the flight. I've never left New York City, Maya admitted. This is my first trip. Harrison was moved to realize he was sharing a completely new experience with her. In Chicago, they stayed at an elegant hotel downtown. During the day, while Harrison was in meetings, Maya explored the city on foot, visiting markets, museums, and parks. At night, they had dinner together and talked about the day's discoveries. You know what impresses me most about this city, Maya said one night, while they dined at a restaurant serving local cuisine. What? The simplicity of the people. Everyone I met today was genuinely kind, without that forced politeness I see in New York City. It's a cultural difference, Harrison explained. The Midwest has a different rhythm, different values. I like it. I like the feeling that people have time to really talk, to get to know each other. Harrison watched how Maya naturally adapted to different environments. In New York City, she handled sophistication and social pressure with elegance. In Chicago, she easily connected with the local simplicity and warmth. "You're a social chameleon," he said admiringly. "What do you mean?" "You adapt to different environments while keeping your essence. That's a rare gift." The trip was a success. Maya felt more confident about her ability to handle different social situations, and Harrison felt more secure about the compatibility between them. When they returned to New York City, they found a surprise waiting for them. Mrs. Eleanor had organized a family lunch to get to know Maya better. It was clearly another test, but this time in a more intimate setting. The lunch was at the Reed Mansion, an impeccably decorated setting that would intimidate anyone. Maya arrived in a simple but appropriate dress, bringing an orchid she had grown herself as a gift. "What a beautiful flower," Mrs. Eleanor commented, genuinely surprised. "I grow them myself," Maya explained. "I've always liked plants. There's something therapeutic about caring for living things." During lunch, the conversation was more relaxed than at previous meetings. Mrs. Eleanor asked questions about Maya's family, her hobbies, her aspirations. "And your mother, how is she?" she asked. "Much better, thank you." "Shh, she's fully recovered from the surgery," Maya replied. "It must have been a difficult time for you." "It was, but it also taught us a lot about the value of family, about how important it is to take care of the ones we love." Mrs. Eleanor looked thoughtful. She knew Maya was indirectly criticizing the way the Reed family handled difficult situations. "Maya," said Charles during dessert, "may I ask a direct question?" "Of course." "What do you really want out of life? What are your dreams and ambitions?" It was a loaded question, but Maya took it as an opportunity to be honest. "I want to be happy," she said simply. "I want to build a meaningful life alongside someone I love. I want to take care of my mother as long as she needs me, and one day I'd like to have my own business, a flower shop where I can create beautiful spaces for people to celebrate special moments." "And Harrison? Where does he fit into those plans?" asked Mrs. Eleanor. "Everywhere," Maya answered, looking at him. "As a partner, as support, as a life companion, and I hope I fit into his dreams the same way." "And what dreams are those, Harrison?" Charles asked his son. Harrison was surprised by the question. It had been a long time since his parents had shown genuine interest in his personal dreams. "I'd like to use architecture for social projects," he said. "Affordable housing, community centers, public spaces that improve people's lives. And yes, I'd like to do that with Maya by my side." Charles and Mrs. Eleanor exchanged glances. These were noble dreams, but very different from the expectations they had for their son. "And the company?" Charles asked. "The company can keep doing what it's always done," Harrison replied. "But I'd like to create a social division focused on community impact projects." It was a smart compromise. Harrison wasn't completely rejecting his family responsibilities, but he was proposing a way to reconcile them with his personal values. The lunch ended in a more positive atmosphere than any previous gathering. There wasn't full acceptance yet, but there was mutual respect emerging. After Maya and Harrison left, Charles and Mrs. Eleanor were alone to discuss their impressions. "She's not what we expected," Mrs. Eleanor admitted. "She's not," Charles agreed. "She's more substantial. And Harrison's dreams, social projects, that's not necessarily bad for the company. Actually, it could be good. Social responsibility matters these days. It might even improve our public image." They were slowly realizing they might find ways to integrate Maya and Harrison's dreams into the vision they had for the family. The third month of the trial period brought an unexpected challenge. The company was negotiating an important contract with an American multinational, and the American CEO was coming to New York City for final meetings. "They'll expect you to have a wife present at the welcome dinner," Charles told Harrison. "Maya can accompany me," Harrison replied naturally. "Harrison," said Mrs. Eleanor cautiously, "these Americans are conservative. They may not understand your situation." "What situation, Mom? Being in love with a wonderful woman?" Being single but living as if you were married. To them, that might seem inappropriate. Harrison understood the dilemma. For this specific meeting, it would be simpler if he and Maya were officially married, or if he went alone. "What are you suggesting?" he asked. "That maybe it's better if you go alone this time," Charles said. "No," Harrison said firmly. "Maya is coming with me. And if they have a problem with that, then maybe they're not the kind of business partners we want." It was a risky position. The contract was worth millions of dollars. "Harrison," Charles insisted, "be pragmatic." "I am being pragmatic. I'm being pragmatic about what's truly important in life." Harrison told the situation to Maya, who was torn. "Harrison, maybe your parents are right this time," she said. "This contract is important to the company. Maya, if I give in now, I'll be giving in forever, and you'll always be the person who gets hidden away when it's inconvenient. But if the deal falls through because of me, then it'll be because they're prejudiced, not because you did anything wrong." The meeting happened as planned, with Maya in attendance. The American CEO, William Harrison, was a 50-year-old man, conservative but polite. During dinner, he asked a few discreet questions about Maya's status. Harrison was honest about the relationship, explaining that they had been together for several months and were considering marriage. "Interesting," said William. "And what do you do, Maya?" "I work in hospitality and floriculture," Maya replied in fluent English, surprising everyone. "You speak English well," William observed. "I studied on my own. It seemed important for personal development," she explained. Harrison felt proud. Maya had anticipated that English would matter and had prepared in secret. The evening was a success. William Harrison was impressed not only by the technical aspects of the business, but also by the family integrity he perceived in Harrison and Maya. "You have a good partnership," he commented to Harrison at the end of the night. "In business and in life, partnerships are everything." The contract was closed successfully, and Charles and Mrs. Eleanor had to acknowledge that Maya had been an asset, not a liability. "When did she learn English?" Mrs. Eleanor asked Harrison later. "Over the last 3 months. She knew she might need it, and she prepared," he replied, still admiring Maya's dedication. "She's very determined," Charles observed. "It's one of the things I love most about her," Harrison agreed. The 4th month brought an unexpected crisis. Mrs. Martha had a relapse and needed to be hospitalized again. This time it wasn't related to her previous cancer, but heart problems brought on by the stress of the past few months. Maya was desperate. She spent days at the hospital, caring for her mother and juggling work with medical responsibilities. Harrison wanted to help, but Maya was reluctant to accept more financial assistance. She already felt indebted because of the previous surgery. "Maya, at least let me pay for the best doctors," Harrison insisted. "Harrison, I can't keep depending on you for everything." "You're not dependent. We're partners. That's what partners do. They support each other." "But the support is always going one way," she said, tired and emotional. "That's not true, and you know it. You support me emotionally every day." The argument was interrupted by an unexpected phone call. It was Mrs. Eleanor. "Maya, I heard your mother is in the hospital," she said. "Yes, ma'am," Maya replied, surprised by the call. "I'd like to visit her." "If you'll allow it, of course." Maya was shocked. "You want to visit my mother?" "Yes, I think it's important to get to know her properly." The next day, Mrs. Eleanor showed up at the hospital with a bouquet of flowers and a genuinely concerned expression. She was surprised to find Mrs. Martha awake and lucid, despite her physical weakness. "Mrs. Reed," said Mrs. Martha, trying to sit up in bed, "what an honor to receive you." "Please make yourself comfortable," said Mrs. Eleanor, pulling a chair up to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better today. The doctors say it was more of a scare than a real problem." They talked for nearly an hour. Mrs. Eleanor was impressed by Mrs. Martha's wisdom and dignity. Despite her limited formal education, she was an intelligent and observant woman. "Mrs. Reed," Mrs. Martha said at one point, "may I speak frankly with you?" "Please. I know you have reservations about my daughter, and I understand why. We come from very different worlds." "Yes, we do," Mrs. Eleanor admitted. "But do you know Maya? Do you truly know who she is?" "I'm trying to. My daughter is the strongest person I know. When her father abandoned us, she was 15. She could have rebelled, could have gone down the wrong path, but she chose to take care of me, to study, to work honestly. Mrs. Eleanor listened in silence. When she found out she couldn't have children, Mrs. Martha continued, she cried for 3 days. Then she got up and said she was going to find other ways to make a difference in the world. That must have been very hard, Mrs. Eleanor remarked. It was. But you know what I'm most proud of? She never lost her ability to love. When she met Harrison, I saw a light in her eyes for the first time in years, something I hadn't seen since she was a child. The conversation touched Mrs. Eleanor deeply. For the first time, she saw Maya not as a threat or a problem, but as a complete person with her own history and admirable qualities. Mrs. Martha, she said before leaving, thank you for sharing that with me. And if there's anything we can do to help with your treatment, thank you, but that won't be necessary, Mrs. Martha replied with a smile. You've already done so much for us. When Mrs. Eleanor left the hospital, she was lost in thought. She was beginning to understand why Harrison had fallen in love with Maya. The strength and dignity she had seen in Mrs. Martha were clearly present in her daughter. That night, she had a long conversation with Charles. Maybe we've been unfair, she said. In what way? We've judged Maya by what she doesn't have. Money, formal education, social status, but we haven't paid attention to what she does have. Which is character, determination, loyalty, the ability to love unconditionally. Charles was surprised by his wife's change in perspective. Are you suggesting we should accept the relationship? I'm suggesting we should stop fighting it and start supporting it. It was a radical shift in position. Charles needed time to process. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Mrs. Martha was recovering well. The doctors said she could be discharged in a few days. Mom, Maya said one afternoon, you talked to Harrison's mother yesterday. How did it go? Interesting, Mrs. Martha replied with a mysterious smile. That's it? Sweetheart, some people just need more time to see the truth. But once they do, the change is real. Do you think she's changing her mind about us? I think she's learning to see you with her own eyes, not with the prejudices she brought with her. Mrs. Martha was right. In the following days, Mrs. Eleanor began to act differently. She called to check on Mrs. Martha's health, asked if Maya needed anything, showed genuine interest. The change became evident when Mrs. Martha was discharged. Mrs. Eleanor showed up at the apartment in the Bronx with a basket of fruit and flowers. I came to welcome you home, she said. Maya was surprised to see Mrs. Eleanor in her humble home. The difference between their worlds was striking there. Please, come in, Maya said, a little embarrassed by the simplicity of the apartment. What a cozy home, Mrs. Eleanor remarked, and she seemed sincere. She spent an hour talking with Mrs. Martha and Maya, genuinely interested in their lives, their stories, their perspectives. Maya, she said before leaving, I'd like to extend an invitation. What kind? The family traditionally hosts a Sunday lunch every month. I'd like you and your mother to be our guests at the next one. Maya was speechless. It was an official invitation, a public acknowledgement of the relationship. Mrs. Martha is feeling well enough for that? Asked Mrs. Eleanor. I think so, replied Mrs. Martha, emotional. It would be an honor. When Mrs. Eleanor left, Maya and Mrs. Martha sat in silence for several minutes. Mom, what just happened? Asked Maya. I think we've just been accepted into the family, replied Mrs. Martha, smiling. Sunday lunch was a milestone. Mrs. Martha, despite her physical weakness, was radiant in her best dress. Maya chose elegant but simple clothes, appropriate for the occasion. The Reed mansion felt less intimidating this time. Charles and Mrs. Eleanor welcomed the two with genuine warmth, and the conversation during lunch was relaxed and natural. Mrs. Martha, said Charles at one point, I heard you used to be a seamstress. I worked 40 years in a workshop in the Bronx, she replied with pride. That must have been work that required a lot of skill and patience. It did, but it also gave me satisfaction. There's something special about creating pieces that make people feel beautiful. Mrs. Eleanor looked thoughtful. I never thought of sewing from that angle, as a form of art. Every profession done well is a form of art, replied Mrs. Martha wisely. After lunch, Charles asked to speak with Harrison privately. Son, he said, Your mother and I have had several long conversations over the past few days. About Maya. About our position. About what really matters. Harrison waited, tense. We came to the conclusion that we were wrong, not about everything, but about what truly matters in a relationship. What does that mean? It means that if you want to marry Maya, you have our blessing. Harrison was shocked. It was the last thing he expected to hear. Dad, are you sure? Is it just because the trial period is almost over? It's because we realized Maya isn't a threat to our family. She could be a valuable addition. And the social differences. They still exist. But I realized that differences can be enriching, not just problematic. Harrison hugged his father, moved. It was the first time in years he felt truly accepted by his family. When he told Maya about the conversation, she was emotional too. They really changed their minds, she asked, incredulous. They did. And you know what else? I think you won them over by being exactly who you are, without trying to be someone else. Your mother is a very special woman, said Maya. Deep down, I always knew she just wanted to protect you. And now she realizes you're not a threat. You're protection too. The 6th month of the trial period arrived with an unexpected proposal from Charles and Mrs. Eleanor. They wanted to formalize not just Maya's acceptance into the family, but also create opportunities for her to grow professionally. Maya, said Mrs. Eleanor in a private conversation, you mentioned your dream of having a flower shop. Yes, ma'am. What if I told you I have a proposal to make that dream come true? Maya was cautious. What kind of proposal? Reed Infrastructure is planning a new development. A unique shopping center focused on local businesses and artisans. We'd like to reserve a space for your flower shop. Mrs. Eleanor, that's very generous, but it's not generosity. It's business. We believe a well-run flower shop would be a perfect anchor for the project, and you'd have total autonomy to manage it however you like. It was an incredible opportunity, but Maya was worried about the motivations behind the offer. Can I talk to Harrison about this? She asked. Of course, actually it was his idea. Harrison confirmed that he had suggested the idea to his parents, seeing it as a way to integrate Maya's dreams into the family's projects. But you have to be sure this is what you want, he said. Don't accept just because it's convenient for us. Maya thought carefully. The flower shop was truly her dream, and this was an opportunity that might never come again. I accept, she said finally, but with a few conditions. What are they? First, I want to pay rent for the space, even if it's a symbolic amount. Second, I want full autonomy to make decisions about the business. Third, if it doesn't work out, I don't want it to affect our family relationship. Charles and Mrs. Eleanor agreed to all the conditions. They were genuinely interested in seeing Maya succeed. With all the obstacles seemingly overcome, Harrison made a decision. On the night that marked exactly 6 months since the start of the trial period, he proposed to Maya. The proposal was simple but perfect. They were at the cafe that had become their place after closing time, alone in the space that had witnessed so many important moments in their relationship. Maya, said Harrison, taking her hands across the table, 6 months ago we started a trial period to see if we'd work out, if our families could accept each other, if we could build something lasting. Yes, she said, smiling but nervous. Well, I've reached a conclusion. What is it? That I don't want any more trial periods. I want certainty. I want commitment. I want you as my wife. He took a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple but beautiful ring with a modest solitaire diamond. Maya Collins, will you marry me? She looked at the ring, then at him, then back at the ring. Tears began to form in her eyes. Harrison, she said finally, are you sure? Really sure? Because once I say yes, I'm not going to let you change your mind. I'm absolutely sure, he replied, smiling. Then yes, 1,000 times, yes. When they kissed, sealing the engagement, they both knew they had overcome every obstacle. Love had conquered prejudice, determination had overcome difficulties, and two people who seemed incompatible had found in their differences their greatest strength. News of the engagement spread quickly through New York City's social circles. The reactions were mixed. surprise, approval, criticism, fascination. But Harrison and Maya were beyond caring about other people's opinions. They had the support of their families, clarity about their goals, and most importantly, true love. The wedding was set for 3 months later, enough time to organize a ceremony that represented them both. It would be a simple but elegant celebration, honoring both the traditions of the Reed family and the simple values of the Collins family. Mrs. Eleanor offered to help with the preparations, and for the first time, Maya accepted an offer from her future mother-in-law with joy instead of awkwardness. "Maya," said Mrs. Eleanor as they chose decorations, "may I apologize?" "For what?" "For taking so long to see who you really are. For letting prejudice cloud my judgment." "Mrs. Eleanor, you don't need to apologize. I understand why it was hard for you to accept our differences. It wasn't about differences, it was about fear. Fear of losing Harrison, fear of change, fear of admitting that maybe our way of seeing the world was limited. And now? Now I know we're not losing Harrison. We're gaining a daughter. And our family is becoming richer, not in money but in love, in diversity and possibilities." The conversation moved them both, definitively sealing the peace between them. The flower shop project was also moving forward. Maya spent hours planning the layout, choosing suppliers, studying market trends. It was exciting to see a dream becoming reality. "Are you sure you want to do this alone?" asked Harrison. "I can help with the administrative side. Harrison, I need to prove to myself that I can build something with my own hands. But thank you for offering." He respected her independence, admiring her determination even more. 3 weeks before the wedding, there was one last surprise. Bradley, Harrison's former best friend, asked to speak with him. They met at a discreet bar, far from prying eyes. Bradley was visibly uncomfortable. "Harrison," he began, "I know I have no right to be here." "You certainly don't," Harrison agreed coldly. "But I need to say a few things. First, that I'm sorry for what happened. There's no excuse for what I did." "There certainly isn't." "Second, that you're right about Maya. She's a special person." "How would you know?" "Because Vanessa told me. About how she helped you two, about her character, about how happy you are together." Harrison remained silent, letting Bradley continue. "Harrison, I didn't just lose you as a friend. I lost Vanessa too. And I lost it all because of my greed and envy." "Envy?" "Yes. I always envied your life, your opportunities, your strength after the accident. When I saw a chance to have something that was yours, you took it." "I did. And now I know it was the biggest mistake of my life." Harrison studied Bradley for a long moment. He saw a genuinely remorseful man before him. "Bradley," he said finally, "I can't forgive you right now. Maybe I never will. But thank you for coming here and being honest." "It's all I can do," Bradley said. "And Harrison, be happy. You deserve it." After Bradley left, Harrison sat deep in thought. There was no forgiveness yet. Perhaps there never would be. But there was a kind of peace in knowing Bradley acknowledged his mistakes. The wedding took place on a sunny spring morning. The ceremony was held in a small but beautiful church in downtown New York City, followed by a reception in an elegant yet welcoming hall. Maya was stunning in a simple but sophisticated dress, chosen with help from Mrs. Eleanor. Mrs. Martha, now fully recovered, wept with emotion as she watched her daughter walk toward the altar. Harrison looked impeccable in a classic suit, but what stood out most was the look of pure joy on his face. When he saw Maya walking toward him, his eyes filled with tears. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she reached the altar. "So do you," she whispered back, smiling through her tears. The ceremony was simple but moving. When the priest asked if they committed to loving each other, in wealth and in poverty, they both smiled, remembering everything they had been through. "I do," Harrison said with conviction. "I do," Maya repeated with equal certainty. The reception was a perfect blend of two worlds, the elegance of high society combined with the warmth of humble people. Wealthy guests danced with neighbors from the Bronx. Socialites chatted with retired seamstresses. Business owners met hard-working laborers. "Look at this," Charles remarked to Mrs. Eleanor, observing the diversity of the guests. "It's beautiful, isn't it? Different people connecting through Harrison and Maya's love." "It is. And you know what? I think our family has become more interesting." Harrison's speech as the groom was simple, but touching. "A year ago," he said, "I was a man who had lost faith in love. Maya taught me that true love doesn't see physical limitations, social differences, or external obstacles. It only sees two people willing to build something beautiful together." He looked at her, radiant at the head table. "Maya, you've completed me in ways I didn't even know I needed. Thank you for dancing with me that night. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being exactly who you are." Maya's speech was equally moving. "When I met Harrison," she said, "I thought I was just being kind to someone who seemed lonely. I had no idea I was meeting the love of my life." She looked at his family, then at her own. "I learned that true love doesn't divide, it multiplies. It didn't separate us from our families, it gave us two families. It didn't limit us, it expanded us." Finally, she looked directly at Harrison. "Harrison, thank you for teaching me that I deserve to be loved exactly as I am. Thank you for fighting for us when I was afraid to fight. And thank you for showing me that the best fairy tales are the ones we build in real life." The celebration went on late into the night, with music, dancing, and plenty of joy. But the most moving moment came when Harrison and Maya took the floor for their first dance as husband and wife. They danced to the same song that was playing the night they met, him in his wheelchair, her beside him, moving in perfect sync. There was no pity, no awkwardness, just two people in love celebrating their union. When the music ended, all the guests rose to their feet, many with tears in their eyes. It was a moment that symbolized everything they had fought for: acceptance, unconditional love, and the beauty of two people who complete each other. 6 months after the wedding, Maya's flower shop was thriving. Blooms and Dreams had become a beloved spot in the neighborhood, known not just for its beautiful flowers, but for the welcoming atmosphere Maya had created. Harrison had managed to implement the social division at Reed Infrastructure, developing affordable housing projects that had earned national recognition. He was living out his dream of using architecture to improve lives. Mrs. Martha had moved into an apartment near her children's, but she kept her independence. She often helped out at the flower shop, charming customers with her wisdom and warmth. The relationship between the families was solid. Charles and Mrs. Eleanor discovered that having a different daughter-in-law had brought fresh, enriching perspectives into their lives. "You know," Charles said to Harrison over a Sunday lunch, "your mother and I were talking yesterday about how much our lives have changed since you got married." "For better or worse?" Harrison asked playfully. "Definitely for better. Maya has taught us so much about what really matters in life." "Like what?" "She showed us that character is worth more than money. That simplicity can be more elegant than extravagance. That family is about love and support, not keeping up appearances." It was a remarkable admission from a man who had spent his entire life focused on status and material wealth. A year after the wedding, Harrison and Maya were at a special consultation. They had decided to explore the possibility of adoption. "Do you have a preference regarding age?" the social worker asked. "No," Maya replied. "We just want a child who needs love and a stable family." "And you understand the process could take a while?" "We do," Harrison said. "The best things in life are worth waiting for." As they waited to begin the adoption process, they kept building their life together. The flower shop was expanding. Harrison was receiving awards for his social projects, and they had found a perfect balance between their professional and personal lives. "Do you regret anything?" Maya asked one evening as they had dinner in their apartment. "Just one thing," Harrison replied. "What?" "Not asking you to dance sooner that night. We could have had a few extra minutes together." Maya laughed. "Harrison, we have our whole lives ahead of us. I don't think we'll run out of time to dance." And she was right. As they cleared the table after dinner, Harrison put on a soft song and reached out his hand to her. "May I have this dance?" he asked, as he regularly did. "Always," she replied, as she always replied. And they danced in the living room of their apartment, as they had danced in the Golden Hall where they first met, as they had danced at their wedding, as they would dance for the rest of their lives. Two people who found in love the strength to overcome any obstacle. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story of love and overcoming adversity. Were Harrison and Maya able to prove that true love can overcome any prejudice? Leave your opinion in the comments and share if you know any real story similar to this one. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to follow more emotional stories like this one that warm the heart.